Welcome back to another episode of Teens for Business. Today, we'll be continuing our discussion from last time about touring in the music industry. I'm your host, Jackie.
I'm Jack.
I'm going.
Yeah, so let's start to talk a little bit more about the political and economic side of tours. And so, just for simplicity's sake, let's talk about one specific case study, Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour. I kind of chose this because I think it's a really good example of just the massive scale of popularity. Because she kind of is at like the top of things, and you really see the effects of the more political and economic side of tourings when you compare it to a slightly smaller artist. And so, like, if there's any other cases, we can also look at that too. But just for simplicity's sake, the main case study we'll talk about today is her Eras tour. And so, kind of as mentioned last time, this tour is like a grand tour that has all of her previous works, and she performs a lot of her former hit songs. And so she does around 44 songs in 3.5-ish hours. And so it really is a lot, but I think that's a good example to talk about and look at some of the effects of touring. And so, just for some background, in accordance with her schedule, she is performing in Tampa Bay, Florida this weekend. And it was recently announced that Jane Castor, who is the mayor of Tampa, would award Taylor Swift with a city key and allow her the position of honorary mayor for a day. And just the city key is kind of given to a really special person who's done a lot for the city. It really is like a big thing. Like, a normal person doesn't get a city key just for existing or just for living in that. It's usually reserved for a really monumental event, reserved for someone who really showed up and did something. So getting a city key is kind of a pretty big deal. And obviously being the honorary mayor for a day is pretty big. I don't think that they would let me be the honorary mayor of Tampa for just a day too. So that really is a big thing, especially for the mayor to do. And Tampa isn't some small like city. It's a pretty big city, and it's one of the biggest in the US. So this is kind of a really big deal. And it was recently announced too, well, it was just reported that her weekend of tours, which is around 3 days in Tampa, would bring in almost $1 million in tax revenues because of concert related expenses. So like her fans going to hotels, they like the travel planes, the dining there, the little events that they do there, from the tax revenues, that brings in a lot of money. And so, to focus first on the city key and the position of honorary mayor for a day, do you think that is a little excessive or a bit too much from Jane Castor? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's like a little bit, because it's not like I'm not sure if she's been to Tampa before, but like it's not like she's a resident of Tampa where she stays there a lot and she's like done something big for the city. It's just she's this really famous artist that people in Tampa like listening to her, but I don't think that means she should receive like a city key or like honorary mayor. What does that even mean, right? Like I just don't. That's like a little bit too much.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I also think people could make the argument that it's not too much because because her tour is like bringing in like a lot of money that maybe like Tampa like needed. I think Tampa, like that area, had like a big storm, like, and they need like a lot of money to like recover, and maybe those tax money could be spent that way. But for right now, I feel like it is like a little bit extreme because like she hasn't. I think she might have been in Tampa before, but I don't think it's for something really like big or something. And she hasn't really like done anything else in Tampa other than like perform. So I don't think she'd get a. I don't think she I think maybe getting a city key and like honorary mayor might be a little bit too extreme, but I'm not sure like how like financials wise how that tax money might recover, maybe like Tampa's recovery from like the recent storm that happened. So maybe it is possible that people could make an argument that she deserves it, but for me right now, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. At the same time, I don't think any mayor would say that, oh no, we don't want that almost $1 million figurehead. I think all of them would be pretty like, oh, like, okay, like we'll take that. The issue is more of like, is a city key and being honorary mayor for a day too much? But yeah, I think that's interesting. Like, even as kind of a fan of Taylor Swift, I think that is a bit excessive. Like that's a lot that you get. Especially since it's only a weekend. It's not like your entire tour of the year is there. But yeah, just that too. And another related question to that is that, do you think there's a political tie into Jane Castor and her actions of doing that? So kind of a breakdown of what that question is that A, because Swift is like one of the most popular artists, do you think she got the mayor got any benefits, or was kind of aiming to associate herself with A, like the money coming in? Because like for any city, having that additional tax revenue means that you can spend more on some of your programs. You just like, more money is always a good thing for a city. And like, because your citizens aren't taxed, it's like well, they are, but it's like additional money. You're not increasing taxes, you're just getting more in. Like, do you think the mayor did that so she can be positively associated with it and have the benefits that way? Or in another sense, do you think that by associating herself with Taylor Swift, a lot of the younger generation or more people who like Taylor Swift would kind of have that same positive association? Like, do you think the mayor personally would benefit from that kind of political thing?
I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure which like political like side like Taylor Swift is like leaning towards. So I don't know if it's like a political thing for the mayor to be like trying to like associating. I think moreover that like it's just like her popularity and like so many people like look up to her as like an inspiration. I think that since she has been an inspiration to like so many people, that's why I think maybe the mayor could have like done done like something to like honor her and like give her like a distinction within like her city. And definitely with the funds, I maybe she could use it for the programs, and I think she will use part of it for the programs. But I think the other part maybe it could be used for like I don't know how like the cleanup process really like works. And also I've heard like as I stated before, like there was like a recent like storm that caused like a lot of flooding in the in South Florida. So I think the tax money that the mayor would get from the tour could be used in like a lot of various different ways, not just like her like political and like economic programs.
Yeah, I think in terms of like aiming for political benefit, I'm not sure if like giving Swift these like the position of honorary mayor and granting her like the city key. I'm not sure if that is like for political gain, but in terms of like what Swift like the amount of money that she's able to bring in for the city, I think that definitely helps. And as a mayor, if you're like going out like trying to express your thanks basically for Swift coming to the city, I guess that could help. So yeah, I think I'm not sure what like his like true intention was with like whether he's genuinely like trying to like like help the city and like help like basically thank Swift for the money that she's going to be able to bring in for the city, or if the mayor actually wants to like use it for political gain.
Yeah, I think those are like, I agree with that. And Jacked brought up about like Jane Castor and like Taylor Swift, if they match kind of in beliefs. And I think Jane Castor, like even though Florida is kind of known as a little bit more conservative, a little bit more Republican, Tampa, I think a lot of like the big cities tend to be more Democratic, and Jane Castor herself is part of the Democratic Party. I think she was like the first gay mayor, or the first like openly gay, she was the first openly gay police executive and like at the top of that branch. And so that was kind of her rise. But I think, especially considering that she is also Democrat and Taylor Swift has been more recently vocal about her political leanings, which are also like more Democratic, I think that kind of does tie in. And I don't think that it's so much of like, okay, I'm going to award her city key and let her be honorary mayor just so people think I'm so cool. Like I did so much of this stuff. I think it's more of like that kind of indirect association of her supporting us, and then we give back to her a little bit, and that like connection there. And that connection kind of brings me into my second point about kind of like this almost $1 million figurehead. And in specifics, it was around $750,000. But keep in mind that is for a weekend. It was for 3 days. Well, I guess technically a little bit more than a weekend, but it was for 3 days. She had 3 shows in Tampa, and over those 3 days, she generated a lot of money. And again, like it wasn't from like additional taxes. It wasn't like the mayor like increased tax percentages. It was just because so many people came into the city, and when you have more people coming in, obviously, as tourists, you have more money, like more revenue from like the hotels, more travel money. It's not like the people actually experience a raise and increase in taxes, just additional money. And this is kind of related to the thing about like how a lot of major cities and even countries like fight over places for large events. So think of like the Super Bowl and the Olympics. I think the Olympics would be a pretty good example of this. A lot of the countries like they have bids to get who like where is the Olympics going to be hosted in. And just talk a little bit about like Rio, for example. The Olympics in Rio, that was a huge event, and Olympics for any country are just very big events. And that kind of process of like you want to host the Olympics because a like your name brand like that you're associated with that, and also because so many people come in, so many sponsorships, so well from companies of the athletes, and then a lot of that. And obviously Taylor Swift and the Olympics are on different scales, but that same concept does apply of like you want to get an artist's attention, you want to get the event's attention, you want to be able to host it because it gives you so much money. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think like that concept still applies? Do you think it is less relevant, or it is applicable differently in like an artist's case? Because Taylor Swift, she is one person. She's not like in the Olympics where there's like multiple events. Like she still is at the end of the day one person.
Okay, so first I'm gonna start off with a question. Is in while she's in Florida, is she like stopping in like other cities, or is she going to like another like city like outside of Florida, or like outside of the Southeast in general?
Yeah, she I think she's doing like a pretty standard tour of like the whole country because she is like a such a big artist. And so she a couple weeks ago she was in Arizona, like Glendale, Arizona, that area, and she was in Nevada for a little bit, and then she came over here to Florida, and she kind of was like doing that whole tour. And even outside of the US, I think she hasn't announced it yet, but people are expecting her to do an international tour since she is so.
Okay, so I just based off of that, I feel like if she's going from like Glendale, Arizona to South Florida, and then maybe I don't know when her, do you know where her next destination is?
No.
Or
I think
okay,
she's doing a lot of destinations. She's doing like basically a lot of the major cities. Like
okay, so I don't think she, after like in being in Tampa, that she would go to like another place like within the Southeast, because like obviously like the it's gonna attract like a lot of people who go to the Southeast. And in that case, I feel like it is I could like definitely expect seeing like a 6 or 7 digit figurehead like with like monetary value, because like she is like so popular. And like I don't think she this type of tour is like super like rare. You don't really get like a really, really famous artist, a really popular artist to like go back into their collection and like find all the songs that really blew up, and then sing them all in like a sort of like a collection. So I think this could be like this is like a kind of a rare occasion, and I'm not sure if she's like leaving like the Southeast. She probably is, and if she is, in that case, I feel like a lot of like Southeast people will also that who really want to like see her tours, like especially since this might be like a one of I guess one of a kind in a way. I think I think I since a lot of people are gonna come from like the Southeast region to like and even from like countries that are like close to like Florida, like I guess like Cuba in a way could also like attract some. Taylor Swift could also attract people from there who also want to see her tours. So I definitely see like a potential like reasoning behind like the 6 and 7 digit figurehead that her tour is generating for the city of Tampa.
Yeah, I think like um in terms of like yeah, I agree with like Jack's point about like if she goes to like Tampa, and then she attracts like a bunch of like large like it's gonna like people all around the southeast area. They're gonna go over there, and yeah, like yeah, I'm not sure like how many cities she's touring, but she definitely covers a lot of the major cities. And for people like in one area, they're definitely gonna be like
Get together basically, like if you're there,
yeah,
you go. Yeah.
but yeah. You want to talk about Ticketmaster?
Yes. This is not the most up-to-date news. This actually happened a while ago, but we're just getting around to discussing it because the topic is related to touring. But for Ticketmaster, for listeners who don't really know what happened, is that because Taylor Swift is such a popular artist, like she has a very big fan base. When her tickets went live, there was this whole thing about just how tickets were being sold, and it's a long story, and like it's a whole process that many fans had to go through. But essentially, some people's tickets got canceled. Some people were in line waiting for tickets, because the way that Ticketmaster does things is like for some tickets, you can just go online and you can just boop, click it, pay, and then you're good. I think for a lot of smaller artists, or even like sporting events where you use Ticketmaster for the same thing, you just go buy your tickets and then you're good to go. But on the first and like couple days that Taylor Swift announced it, there was like a whole line. So a lot of fans had to wait in this virtual line for over like 5 hours. Funny enough, my English teacher was actually in line for the Taylor Swift tickets when I was in his class. And so it just kind of shows that like people had to wait for hours, and it was just during inconvenient times of the day. And but that wasn't the thing, because Ticketmaster, there was like kind of some mess ups, and there was just like extra charging, charging upwards of prices. Like if it was only supposed to be this much, Ticketmaster ended up charging an amount higher, or people were waiting in line for 10 hours, and then boom, suddenly there was like a crash and their like entire place just got messed up, and so they wasted 10 hours. But basically it was a whole fiasco with what happened, and a lot of fans got very angry, and there's actually two sides to this. So number one is that Ticketmaster is facing a lawsuit. I don't know if it's still like what the current process is, but they faced a lawsuit from Taylor Swift fans that was saying like, oh, like this is not okay, like we got scammed. And I'll spare you guys the legal details of it, but it was just basically saying how it was not a fair process and it should not have been legal for them to do that. And then on the other side, on the more political side, Ticketmaster also faced this kind of inquisition into their practices from Congress. And so what happened was that there was a merger with Ticketmaster and another company, so Live Nation, and they kind of came together a few years ago. And now you buy tickets, the stadiums are there too, and it's all just one big thing. And I think this has been happening, and like they have been kind of doing the same things. Nothing really changed. It's just that this time, because this was such a big event and Taylor Swift fans like really blew it up, and it was so big that it caught the attention of Congress. And it was just an opportunity for them. And basically they got called in to be like, oh yeah, we're actually not a monopoly, guys. But Congress was like, hey, are you violating any antitrust laws? Are you doing anything illegal, basically? And that kind of happened. And so what are your thoughts on that? Do you think Live Nation A, or Ticketmaster A, did violate, and should they be should the people, like the fans who sued Ticketmaster, should they actually win? Or do you think that's just a case of like, you wanted to go to your artist's concert but didn't get it, I'm sorry, like it's not our fault? And B, do you think that Congress should take action on Ticketmaster for being like a antitrust violation?
I think that Ticketmaster's practices are a little bit unethical, since like they're like a monopoly. They can like set prices, and therefore just to like maximize their profit, they have to like they can like set prices, and they, as a result, they like market like higher up than it like kind of should be. I just feel like that is like unethical, because it like allows them to like get money. And since even if they deny that they are a monopoly, I think it's pretty clear that they are a monopoly, because for me at least, even for my like local orchestra, like outside orchestra concerts, like they use Ticketmaster to do it. And like I think just generally like Ticketmaster has become such a like a staple in like the like just like show, tour, concert like culture, that like tickets you can just like it's just like so reliable. And since it's like so big, I feel like their practices could be like a little unethical because they like intentionally like mark up like the tickets like just to like have them like make profit, and like that could definitely be like that could definitely be like susceptible to like arguments that like about them like violating antitrust laws. And if I do think Congress should like potentially find a way to like take action against like Ticketmaster, because like they're clearly doing like an unethical like business practice. They're getting like they're prioritizing profit, and as a result, they're marking up prices that like are that kind of like screw with like people's like economic situations. So I feel like there could I don't know if Congress discussed like dissolving like their earlier merger, but I I think I heard that that was a thing, but I'm not too sure. But feel like if they can try to like eliminate the monopoly, that could be a potential solution to the Ticketmaster like unethical business practices problem.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an issue because like with the amount of people that are like complaining about them and the fans that are like trying to sue them for like their issues. I know it's like you could say it's like the fans like just complaining because they couldn't get a ticket, but with like the sheer like amount of people complaining, it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. So like I know one person like I've seen like one person try to buy tickets like 40 times and it's like never went through. And yeah, because Ticketmaster is like the one main site for tickets. So people are gonna just be on Ticketmaster. So if like people like try to buy tickets and they don't go through, but then apparently this one person, she tried to buy tickets and they never closed, but the charges were added to her account for like over like 10,000 something dollars. And like it's that like caused her to not be able to buy more tickets because her card ended up being declined. And that's just like for a site that's like so popular with like concert sales, that should never like be happening. And yeah, because I heard that like with Live Nation too, they're also being investigated. So the whole thing is just like kind of sketchy for a major company.
I feel like just to also like add on to that, like I think we briefly touched this in the episode that we like recorded on Sunday, but I feel like some people are using like are buying like the Ticketmaster, but then they're reselling the tickets to get an even like bigger profit for themselves. And I feel like Ticketmaster doesn't really do like anything to like prevent that from happening. And that is also like that perhaps could be a even more unethical like practice than just like than Ticketmaster. And Ticketmaster doesn't really do anything about that. And that's like and the ticket reselling market is like really it's like really big. It's like blown up because there's like so many like major concerts and stuff. So I feel like maybe Ticketmaster or whatever companies that are in this like market right now, it's gonna be Ticketmaster, but potentially in the future, I think this ticket reselling issue also needs to be addressed because it's also pretty unethical.
Yeah, like that is a really big thing. I heard a while back that for all of these tickets, what kind of happened was that like they would be so difficult to get, and like some people just aren't willing to wait in line or in this virtual line for like 5 hours on end, which is completely understandable. So what a lot of people choose to do is that they wait a little bit because resale tickets are like inevitable in a way almost. Um, and they just kind of let people go first, and usually those people who decide to wait are willing to pay a little bit of a premium to get the tickets and like avoid that 5 hour wait. But what kind of happened, especially with the bigger artists, is that the resale prices are astronomically out of range. Like if a ticket was regularly $500, for example, which is still pretty expensive, but on resale that would turn into like $1,000. I actually tried to like look at some of the tickets during like a couple of days after the tour went live, or the tour, like the announcement happened, and the ticket prices were just so astronomically high, like it was insane. They were like $1,000 tickets, like that was the norm. It wasn't like, oh, a couple hundred, it was like in the thousands. And I think it's also really interesting when you consider that Ticketmaster and like Live Nation, it's not just for like Taylor Swift, it's not just for like the big companies or the big artists, like they also handle the sporting things too. Like I know for NFL, like you can buy your tickets on Ticketmaster. There's obviously other sites too that you can get it from that are probably cheaper, but Ticketmaster does do that. And it's not just Taylor Swift, but also other artists. And I think actually in one of the Congress hearings, some artists came. He was talking about how like Ticketmaster's practices actually hurts the artists themselves. And I think for an artist just as big as Taylor Swift, it probably doesn't really hurt her that much. Like the difference between 500 million and like the difference of 502 million is like not that big. But when you like scale that down to a smaller artist, that like difference in income, difference in revenue is probably a lot, which is another reason why like they were just so against, like why it's so unethical, like why everyone was talking about A, it's inconvenient for fans, B, it's just monetarily unethical, and that whole situation. But obviously Ticketmaster, like nothing currently has changed. I think they're still in the process because antitrust lawsuits, like they take forever, and like they haven't really even started to, they had a hearing, but it wasn't anything like, okay, we are going to like do any action. It was just a hearing almost. So that situation is probably still going to be played out, and depending on the future, like if another big artist goes on tour and then it's the whole fiasco again, then like something might happen, but that is still in the future and we'll see like where that goes. And so unless you guys have anything else to say, we can get started on our takeaways. So what did you guys think about?
I definitely think that one of my takeaways is that as like for this, I definitely think that in Tampa for like the $750,000 and like it's like close to like a million, and I definitely think that like that money can be like spent in like different like various ways. It can be spent like based on like how the mayor like wants it, but due to the recent like storm crisis, it could be allocated to that. It could be allocated to make maybe like the cleanup of the concert. It could be allocated to so many different purposes. And like some people may like consider that what the mayor's doing could be like a political inclin it could be a little bit political inclination, but I don't think that giving like Taylor Swift like a I guess like a honorary mayor and like the city key, I don't think that's like really political. It's just I think that's just down to because she's like influenced so many young young children, teens, even young adults. They've like they're like big fans of her. They look up to her, and she's like an inspiration to those people. I just feel like just giving her like the honorary like mayor and like those like city key, I just think it's just a way for the city to like give like give thanks to her, not just for like inspiring them, but also for like I guess also the monetary aspects that will come after the concert.
Yeah, for my takeaway, I just think it was very interesting, just like taking a look at different artists and in terms of their touring. Yeah, like with the spectrum of like famous musicians and not so famous in terms of like how expensive concerts should be set. I just thought it was like pretty interesting thinking about like the strategy for these smaller artists, whether they want to go for like price their tickets higher or like get as many like of their like fans in as possible, so like they would set concert prices lower. Yeah, I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things I thought was most interesting too, is like the whole economics of touring. Like obviously artists go, like they are artists and are musicians because they love what they do, or at least most of them do, I hope. But like obviously they have their passion in it, but at the same time, because it is such a big event, like no matter how big of an artist you are, no matter if you're Taylor Swift, and no matter if you're like a smaller artist who does arena tours, there's still a lot of like production things you have to think about. It's not just a free event. You're not just going there singing with the little microphone. It's like a whole production thing that goes on. So you obviously do have to think about the economics of things and the economics of how much I price my tickets for. Like how much money would it be? How much money does that go for? And I think that's like pretty interesting to think about too, especially like because both big artists and smaller artists have to think about it. Like if you're on the smaller end, you think, okay, well, if I can't sell at a stadium, would I rather more people come and have like a lower ticket price, or would I rather slightly less people come but like at a higher pricing? Versus like if you're a big artist, you think about like, would I rather people come, like they have an opportunity to get tickets, but at a higher price? Or would I rather just sell it at a lower price and then whoever comes first, whoever gets it, gets it? And I think like that's an interesting dilemma and also interesting contrast to think between the two kind of spectrums. But yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for all of our listeners for joining us today on this episode of Teens for Business. And I'm so excited for this, and we'll see you next time.